So I live in Michigan, which unfortunately means that we have a lot of cold weather. And one thing that I don't like is cold weather. But this morning, as I was walking into the church, I get there pretty much before everyone else most days. And today there was a lot of freezing rain. So the sidewalk was pretty icy. So I went and found some salt. I grabbed the salt and I just started sprinkling it on the ice, knowing that when I do so, it's going to melt the ice so that the people who come in behind me aren't going to slip and fall. But it's so funny because I love how good God is. As I was doing that, and I'm like, taking the salt and just kind of like throwing it down on the ice and knowing that when I do that, the ice is going to melt. I just felt God speak to me that a lot of times obviously we know that we're called to be the salt in the earth, but a lot of times we don't utilize the things in our hands that God has given us. So as I'm throwing the salt down, I felt God just reminding me, like, we need to be that salt and light in the earth. And a lot of times we know to be salt and light. In Matthew, it talks about, he's the light of the world. And when we give off our light, we allow people to see our good works and glorify the Father in heaven. But a lot of times when it comes to salt, I think it's a little bit more difficult to figure out how are we going to be that salt in the earth. Now in Matthew, it talks about salt is its seasoning. Right here it says in Matthew 5:13, it says, "You're the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It's then good for nothing but to be thrown away and trampled underfoot," right? So I think we understand that salt is a great seasoning, and salt, obviously, for most people, has a positive effect on food. When you think back to when the scriptures were written, I'm sure they didn't have all this scientific proof about what salt is, but they knew that if they added it to food, it would be good. They knew that if they added it to meat, it would preserve the meat. But as I was throwing the salt down on the ice today, I came to this realization that salt, when you throw it down on the ice, what it does is, again, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to use any scientific words whatsoever. But the reality of it is, and breaking it down into simple terms, is it like messes up the molecules and it lowers the freezing point of water. So now, obviously, if you throw salt down on ice when it's negative 5 degrees out, it's not going to work. But right around this, like 35 down to 20 something. I don't know what it is. You can look it up if you want. But when you throw salt on ice, it lowers its freezing point. So in this certain range of temperatures, you're able to melt the ice with salt. And again, as I was throwing it down, I was like, wow, God is so good, because I was thinking there's so many people with hard hearts out there. There's so many people who are on the verge of having a hard heart. And if we could actually become salt in this world, we could have this opportunity to really go into the world and use who God has created us to be, use his light, use his salt to really reach a world that's hurting, reach a world whose heart is on the verge of freezing over to where they would never be open to God again, or where they're to the point of shutting down or closing off any relationship with God. And we could get in there and act as salt and say, hey, I'm going to come in here with my love. I'm going to come in here with my kindness. I'm going to come in here with the fruits of the Spirit. I'm going to come in here just as Jesus would. And I'm going to come into you, and I'm going to come into that situation, and I'm going to help lower that freezing point by giving you the word of the Lord, by giving you just joy and giving you all these different things. So we, as the people that God has called us to be, it's not just about, how we can, benefit ourselves, but really using who God has created each and every one of us to be, to go in and have that positive change on other people. So I just want to encourage you that if you know someone who is, shutting themselves off to, maybe it's not even God, but it's to the world, or to, where they're just starting to get a bitter heart or a hard heart, that you could go in there and really share the love of God, share his word, and share what he's done in you. Use your testimony, right? To get in there and be salt and lower that freezing point so that they have time to really accept Jesus into their heart. And when that word's coming in, it's falling on a soft and ready and moldable heart. So I just want to encourage you to be salt and light in the world. And one more scripture I want to leave you with is, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify the Father in heaven. God has given us that ability to, through our words and our actions, to really be able to bring glory to his name.